Hello, my name is Jakob Munck. Welcome to a seminar about the history of democracy. I have my computer here beside me and my screen recorder is running, and at the same time I'm going to talk to you here with the camera, and altogether this will be section number 1 of this seminar. There will be 4 sections altogether. And I hope to keep this simple because history is a very complex matter, you know. But let's start up by admitting that democracy is a very good thing. I like democracy. I think it is the ideal way to run a society. If all people can vote and decide how they want the society to be run, well, it is probably a good society. But democracy cannot stand alone. To have democracy, you also need to have freedom. If you don't have freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of religion, freedom of ideology, then you can't not have a real democracy. And when we're talking about freedom, we also have to talk about limits for the freedom, because freedom can never be 100%. You can never be free to kill other people, never be free to steal, never be free to hurt other people just because you want to do something you like yourself. So democracy and freedom, it is 2 parts of the same ideal that we are talking about in this short series. And before we start, I will tell you one more thing. This is a critical entrance to the subject of democracy. I'm not going to tell you that we have a perfect democracy in the world today, in Europe today, in America, or in Denmark, where I'm living myself. We do not have a perfect democracy, but we have elements of democracy and elements of other kinds of state rule. And I believe that history will show that democracy is only one part of the way to run a society. It can never be the ultimate, the universal solution for any society in any time. History will change also in the future, as it has been changing for the last 2,000 years. And that's what we'll see now. Well, I'll start up with picture number 1. This picture, it shows democracy in Greece 2,500 years ago. It is said that democracy was invented in Greece. I'm not quite sure if that is true, but for sure in certain towns in Greece, for example in Athens, they had some kind of democracy. But we have to remember that it was not a total democracy, because only around 10% of the population had the right to vote. The other 90% were women, slaves, workers, prisoners. They didn't have any possibility to vote. Only the rich and powerful people had the right to vote. But these people, they had some kind of democracy. The majority could select their own leader and could decide what kind of policy the state of Athens should have. And that is foreign policy, economical policy, and so on and so forth. And now let's move on to Rome. Not many years later, Rome was a very powerful place in this world. It was the main city in what is called the Roman Empire. And in Rome, they had senators who had the power. And the senators, they voted when they wanted to take decisions about this or that subject. Of course, there were only quite a few senators compared to the whole population, but still it was some kind of democracy. It was not so. It was not only one personal ruler that decided everything. It was not an emperor who decided everything. Actually, it was the Senate who had the power to select this, the power holder of the Roman Empire and also of the city of Rome. So this was some kind of limited democracy. And now we jump around 1500 years later in history. Here we have Martin Luther. Martin Luther, he was a German monk who didn't like the Catholic Church, and therefore he split out from the Catholic Church and started up his own religion. Today this is called Protestantism, and there are several thousand different sects and directions in Protestantism, but they all have the common opinion that they do not want to be united with the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church, so they have their own small churches. And because of this split out from the Roman Church, it was decided that in Germany should be divided up in small parts, and every one of these parts had their own ruler, their own king, their own emperor, and this ruler, he could decide what religion should be the common religion within this section of what is today called Germany. So this was maybe the first time in history where people actually had some kind of freedom of religion, because if you were a Catholic or a Calvinist or Lutheran or something else, you could move to the part of Germany where this religion was allowed and was the common religion. So there was some kind of religious freedom after the Reformation. We do not have to thank Martin Luther for this freedom, because Martin Luther, he was not at all a follower of any kind of democracy. Actually, he told the leaders of the small states in Germany that if they had any problems with the peasants, and remember peasants were the great majority of the population in the 15th century, well, they could just kill the peasants. Well, now let's move up to the French Revolution in 1789. The French Revolution was an uprising from the common people against the king and the monarchy and the rulers of France. They attacked the big castle in Paris, and they actually executed the queen. So they went against the monarchy and tried to install some kind of democracy. And you know they had this saying, freedom, liberty and equality. It was the ideology that the French Revolution was based upon. And after that time, these three words has constituted some kind of ideological basis for many of the democratic countries, not at least in Europe, but also in America. And now we come to, we jump another time, and now we are up to 1940 to 1945, the time where Adolf Hitler had a big war going on, first of all against Russia, against Soviet Union. Actually, Adolf Hitler, he came to power in 1933, and he was elected in a democratic way. But as soon as he had the power, he tried to change Germany to be some kind of dictatorship where all political parties who did not agree with the National Socialists, they were forbidden, and their followers were put in jail or in concentration camps. Here you have a big meeting held by Adolf Hitler, and this shows that he was a follower and admirer of discipline. He did not have a democratic society. Actually, he didn't like democracy at all. He wanted the whole German population to be united. And it's very hard to have a united population when you have a democracy, because in a democracy you will discuss, there will be different political parties that do not agree about different subjects. So there will be many sections of the society, and they will maybe do not agree with each other. So there will always be some kind of political, ideological conflict in a democracy. Well, actually, this is the basic of the whole democratic idea. But in Germany, they do not only have democratic problems, they also have religious problems, because in the north of Germany, most people are Protestants, in the south they are Catholics. So it's extra difficult to have a running democracy in Germany. And after the war, Hitler, he was defeated, first of all, by the Russians, but in the end, Hitler took his own life, and Germany was totally changed, and whole Europe was changed. In United Nations, the different countries represented in the United Nations, they agreed about a universal declaration of human rights. And this declaration, it was, they had a voting about it, and they decided to make it some kind of universal law, pointing to the ideals of every country in the world. And this happened the 10th of December 1948. So this was a very important day in the history of democracy. And this declaration, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it had a lot of ideas about what democracy, what freedom is. It was said that every people in the world should have the right to vote, should have the right to decide their own religion, to choose their own religion. They should have the right to equality, the right to freedom of thinking, freedom of expression, and the right to be free, not go to jail without a trial. And this is a good society, because we need to have jails. We will have criminals in any society, and we have to be able to put them away. But in the Declaration of Human Rights, it said that the law must be written, and you must have a maximum of freedom. First of all, the freedom to speak, the freedom to think, the freedom to write what you want, actually the freedom to do everything as long as you do not harm other people. And this is the end of the first part of this series with 4 sections. And here in the end, I have 2 questions. One question I'll answer myself, and another question I want you to answer. You can write your answer in the commentary field below the video. The first question is, democracy is that the citizens of a country select their own rulers. This is the basic idea of democracy. Is there a limit to the power of these rulers? This is the question. And I'll give you the answer. Yes, of course there is. Any democratic society shall only have the possibility to decide how the population in this specific society shall live. In Germany, they can vote about the political leaders for Germany. They can decide how Germany shall be. In England, they can decide how England shall be. In Denmark, we can decide how Denmark shall be. So imperialism is not included in the idea of human right. You can't have a society, and I won't mention any names, you can't have one big society with a lot of power and military weapons that can force their will upon all societies, because every society has the right to decide how they want to live their life themselves. So to control other societies and call this a consequence of democracy, that is not possible. If that happens, it's not democratic, it is anti-democratic. And now we come to the end of this section here, and the question for you is, do you think that human rights is a good idea? I've told you that it's impossible to fulfill human rights 100%, but it is an ideal. Do you think it's a good idea? Yes or no? Thank you for listening.